All right, we are ready to talk more Kansas City Chiefs football with Charles Goldman from A to Z Sports. We want to make sure everybody checks out, and we have a link in the description area of the channel here where you can check out the interview I did with Charles, where we just dove into the top 3 draft needs. That's on the Our Lads Football channel, so check that out. That was really insightful, and we're going to talk a little bit about everything that Charles talked about on that video. Not as extensive, but we'll definitely get into that as well here as we take a look at the depth chart. And let's go ahead and do that, Charles. But actually, before we do that, how's the draft capital right now for the team?
Yeah, I think it's in a good spot. We've got 7 picks right now. Obviously, there's still some possibilities that they could add some more with trade. They're open to trading L'Jarius Sneed, so we'll see if that happens, if they return any draft capital there. But right now I think you're sitting at 7 picks. You have some flexibility to be able to move around, be selective if you need to, and I think that's what Brett Veach likes to do. Obviously, we've seen him make a lot of draft day trades before and move around, find the guys that he likes and that the team targets that they want. And I think that we'll see that again from him this year.
All right. And so first pick, they still have the first rounder. So that's at the end of the draft. And I also want to ask you about the trade rumors going on. They're hot and heavy, of course, with L'Jarius Sneed. So he's been tagged. And some people thought he was already traded a couple of days ago. So what's the latest on how you think this is going to go between now and the draft, L'Jarius Sneed?
Yeah, I think people are kind of balking a little bit at the Chiefs saying that they're willing to keep L'Jarius Sneed on the tag, and I think you need to take them seriously there, because one, I don't think they're going to trade away a player that they like, the coaching staff likes, the team likes. I don't think they're going to trade him away for peanuts. I don't think they're necessarily willing to give him a long-term deal in Kansas City. I don't think they're going to meet his contract demands, but I don't think they're worried about a holdout type of situation. I think they're confident that if they keep him on the tag, he's going to play. They already saw this past year what it looks like when L'Jarius Sneed misses basically all of training camp, which he did this year with his knee injury, and comes in and plays a full season. He doesn't need to be there for training camp. So if he holds out for training camp, so be it. I don't think the Chiefs are going to mind that. And obviously you're not going to give up the $19.8 million in guaranteed money because the Chiefs were unable to trade you. So I think they're not worried about a holdout situation or anything like that with Sneed. I really truly believe that the holdup in any sort of trade here has just been contract related.
Okay.
That what he wants is not in line with what the market had available for him this year. I think the team saw the Jalen Johnson deal and they said, this is the top of the market. Like, that's the deal that I think they're willing to give him that deal, but that doesn't get him more money than he would have this year on the tag. Right? That doesn't get him any closer to being the highest paid cornerback in the league, which has been stated that's something that he wants. So I think that there's a little bit of disconnect there, and that has been holding things up. I think Sneed feels like he deserves that after the type of season that he had, but NFL teams look at the all-encompassing picture. He's never been an all-pro. He's never been a Pro Bowler. Sure, he has 2 rings. There's some injury questions with the knee that obviously have come up. So I think that when you put it all together, that is why this has been so difficult to get a deal across the finish line. We'll see if something happens, closer to the draft, during the draft. Maybe he's included in a package to move up in the first round. Sure. You never know. You never know. There's a lot of possibilities that could still happen there. I certainly know that they're prepared, that the team feels like they have a player on the 53-man roster, or the 90-man offseason roster, I should say, who is the direct replacement option for Sneed should they trade it. I feel like they know they have that guy on the roster. Otherwise, they wouldn't be even entertaining trades like this.
And that player is?
Well, right now you have him in the free safety category here, and that is Najee Johnson. And
wow, okay.
He was playing cornerback last year. Well, in his rookie season, they had him playing slot cornerback. And last year, they had him playing outside cornerback before he got injured in training camp. They had an indoor practice in training camp, and there was a tackle or something, collision that happened. He ended up with a season-ending knee injury. But I've spoken to Najee before, and he's basically told me that the team has big plans for him, and that he's kind of followed the same track that L'Jarius Sneed has coming into the NFL, which was he was playing safety in his final year in college, but his athletic traits and what he brought to the table were better suited for playing the cornerback position. His speed, his ability to stick in the hip pocket with these types of receivers, that was valued more at the cornerback position than it was at the safety position. And that's kind of when they began to transition him and say, okay, let's see what this guy can do at slot corner. And once he succeeded there, they said, okay, let's see what this guy can do at cornerback, outside corner. And as he continued to grow and impress the coaching staff, I mean, they were on the track to have him as the team's third starter in their nickel defense. Like, he was the guy who was going to be out there with Sneed and McDuffie on the regular basis before he got injured. And, unfortunately, the injury took place and he wasn't able to get a chance to show that this year. Okay. But he's been working to get back, and he's out to claim that spot again. He's ready to get out there and show guys what he has. So, I think that that's going to be a development that fans are going to want to keep an eye on.
Absolutely, love it, awesome. All right, so let's start with the defense then, and the secondary. So let's say that scenario takes place. Taking a look at the rest of the secondary, is that really it? Like, if Sneed goes, and it does look like that's what's going to happen. It appears that most likely he's going to get traded, and then if that happens, and Johnson is the one that's going to potentially slide in, sounds like he is. Is it now just about adding another player or two for depth? Is there another player in that on that depth chart that we need to keep an eye on as far as backups?
Yeah, I think you got to look at some of the guys who've, obviously been drafted the last couple of years or even undrafted. Echo Boyedo, interesting player, undrafted out of K-State, came on really strong late in the year as a special teamer.
Okay.
Nick Jones, late round draft pick, another guy who really excelled at special teams last year. Those are two guys that obviously you have to look at as kind of that next wave of depth, behind guys like Joshua Williams and Jalen Watson. I think those guys have proven themselves time again as the key depth players in Kansas City. Watson played all season last year with a significant shoulder injury. Injured it in week 2. He played all season with it, got surgery after the offseason. And he went on to make one of the bigger plays on special teams in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Joshua Williams, the Chiefs love his size. And he, as a rookie, he struggled a little bit with tracking the ball in the air and competing, at the catch point with some of these bigger receivers. But this year he was a lot better there. And I think, that's a guy that you're going to trust a lot more in year 3. Chamari Connor is a chess piece. He's a guy that you can move around. You can play at a lot of different spots. He played some nickel for the Chiefs last year. I think that's a guy that, probably has some ability to play cornerback too as well. So having that versatility, I know that's something that Steve Spagnuolo likes in his secondary, some guys that can kind of be interchangeable there. I'll tell you one just at the safety position that the Chiefs should look out for too. Trey Dean. He was a player a lot of people thought he was going to be drafted. He had a
That's
really,
right.
really, really nice Senior Bowl. Ends up with the New York Jets last season, and they had a pretty stellar defense. They didn't have a lot of injuries in their secondary, so he was on the practice squad all year long. Didn't get a chance to play, and when their season ended, the Chiefs poached him from their practice squad, signed him to their own practice squad, and they brought him back again this year. It was interesting to me. There's a story that I had put out. The Jets team reporter talked to Bryce Huff, who's one of their star defensive ends. I think he went to the Eagles in free agency. I believe.
Yes.
Yeah. So he talked to Bryce Huff at the end of the season, kind of asked him about like who's someone who had impressed you with like their growth and like what they've shown this year. And he brought up Trey Dean as someone who had impressed him and kind of evoked his own story as an undrafted free agent, coming out and the type of work that he put in and whatnot to earn his opportunities. And he evoked that player, evoked Dean when he was talking about that. And I just thought, I thought that was really interesting. I think he's someone that, Kansas City really likes. And, you look at a guy like Mike Edwards, who's a free agent right now, is taking visits with other teams, doesn't look like he's coming back. I think that, fourth safety spot, the Chiefs typically carry four, Cook, Reed, Connor, and then is it going to be Deion Bush? Is it going to be Trey Dean? I think those are the two guys who are going to be really competing for that last spot.
Sounds like, and that's not surprising, of course. The Chiefs have done a really good job of drafting, which is why they're back-to-back Super Bowl teams, especially when you have to draft and rely on young players to do that and to round out your roster, your depth chart. But you take a look, and not many teams. It's not just the fact that they have a lot of players they drafted that are still there on the secondary depth chart, but most of them, once you come off the starters, and even one of them that's starting, are mid to late round draft picks, and even a couple of guys that weren't even drafted that are potentially going to be significant pieces of their secondary. So that's scouting. That's why they're that's why it's, of course, Patrick Mahomes is, of course, and Andy Reid are big reasons, but you can't have a Super Bowl championship team 3 times over without really good scouting. So
yeah, I think what the Chiefs have done a really good job of over the last several years is creating that internal competition, right? Like they have guys who are always competing, always pushing each other and making each other better. And they protect themselves, with the moves they make in free agency. They protect themselves from, feeling that pressure and that need to draft a specific player like right now, right? Yep. Like, adding, I mean, we can just look at the interior defensive lineup here. Last year they traded for Neil Farrell Jr., right? At the early on the season when Chris Jones was holding out, when they didn't know how that was going to go. Late in the year, they signed Isaiah Buggs after the Lions cut him. They signed him to the practice squad to kind of get him in the system and see if he could potentially be something, right? So I think that tells you the Chiefs, look, they're looking at these guys and they're like, okay, I hope that Neil Farrell Jr. can take the step forward next year, be higher up on the depth chart than we have him now. I hope Isaiah Buggs can be higher up on the depth chart than we have him now. But I'm going to re-sign, Derek Nottie, Tershawn Wharton, Mike Pennell. I'm going to re-sign these guys in free agency. Why? Because that's going to raise that bar. That's going to raise that level of competition. Those guys aren't going to be handed the job just because they're here. Neil Farrell, they invested, 6th round pick or whatever it was, late round pick to trade for him. Bugs, sure. They gave him some guaranteed money to bring him back this year. Like they want those guys to succeed, but they're going to have to go out and earn it. They're going to have to earn that job from a Mike Pennell, from a veteran. They're going to have to earn that job from a Tershawn Wharton. They're going to have to, earn that job from a Derek Nottie. So it raises the bar for those guys. And it really raises the ceiling for what that entire unit can be, and it's like that way across the board.
Yeah, I mean, just take a look at it. Just if we're only looking at the second row, you see free agent, free agent, free agent. Yes, the first round draft pick. We'll get to him in a little bit. Free agent, free agent, free agent, free agent, fourth rounder. Yes, you finally have a NFL free agent, and
Right.
then fourth rounder, seventh rounder. I mean, I'm sorry, but I've been doing this a lot this year, and I don't see many teams at all that have that kind of those kind of players right there as as the main backups to their starters.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's get into let's move up and talk about the linebackers, because the linebackers, if you want to take a look at one area that has drastically improved, just as the Chiefs defense has drastically improved over the last few years, it's the linebacker. So right now, especially when you throw in, well, let's just talk about the main three. These three guys are going to be back again. You're probably not going to see a whole lot of activity here the rest of the offseason.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if they maybe did like a late round pick, or gave an undrafted free agent a lot of guaranteed
another
money
one
to
of
bring him
those.
in.
Yeah.
I know that all these guys, these 6 guys that they have, like they're beloved. The defensive coaching staff has full faith in all these guys.
Okay.
I think Tranquil, bringing him back on the 3-year deal, I think that's the most interesting move of the offseason, because Nick Bolton has a contract coming up, and you just have to wonder if, with Bolton having his contract coming up as the same time as some of those interior offensive linemen, what's going to happen there? Is the move to sign Tranquil, an indication that, maybe they're not going to give Bolton a long-term deal in the future? I think it's possible. I think that they might value some of those people on the offensive front a little bit higher, as much as Nick Bolton has meant for this team. Obviously, big-time leader on the defensive side of the ball. Spags loves him. His teammates love him. He has some limitations. Obviously, he's not the best coverage guy. He's improved there over the years. This last year, he was hurt a lot, and having Drew Tranquil around was a saving grace. Because if they didn't, I don't know that position group would have performed nearly as well. Drew's a guy who can play Mike if you need him to. I think Leo Chenal has taken a step forward in his development, which that allows you to maybe make that decision a bit with Bolton when it comes up. And then, if I'm looking at this group, and I'm looking at one guy that I think could really take a big step forward and play a big role this year, I think it's Cam Jones. I think he impressed some people last year. Got injured towards the end of the season there, but I think he's someone to watch who could potentially be a big piece moving forward.
So out of those 3 backups, Cam Jones is the one to watch.
Yeah, I would say Cam Jones is the one to watch. I think Cole Christensen and Jack Cochran, they've kind of proven themselves as valuable depth. But if there's one guy who I think can be a little bit more than valuable depth, it's probably Cam Jones.
All right, and then the defensive line. So yeah, I mean, we have a good idea watching as much football, especially in the postseason and big games, what these guys are made of the last couple of years. But I got to ask you about last year's first round pick. So what's going on there? What are the Chiefs happy with his development? Is he behind in his development? Because I know Karlaftis and this happens a lot. Players in the first round, pass rushers, takes them a year. And then you got to wait to that second year before, the light turns on. So where are they right now with Azuma?
Yeah, I think they were happy with his production. I mean, when he was on the field, he was producing. It wasn't like, box score going crazy. It wasn't like he was getting 2-3 sacks a game or something like that. Yeah. But like he was doing his job. He was defending the run well. He was creating pressure. Right. And some of I think he had like a half a sack or something, low sack numbers, but he didn't have a whole lot of opportunity, right? Because he was getting in there early a bit when Omenihu was suspended. And obviously Mike Dana was playing a lot ahead of him. Mike Dana's not there anymore. Still a free agent, could come back potentially if his market doesn't develop. You never know. But I think they were pleased with his development. I think obviously he's a young player. I think he's only 21, 22 years old, if I'm not mistaken. So he still has a long ways to go in terms of his development. Just from a physical and age standpoint, right?
Okay.
And I think that's part of it last year. That was part of it. I think he's going to be a lot more comfortable this year, and I think the coaching staff's going to be a lot more comfortable relying on him this year.
Okay.
I'm also excited to see him get like an off season in, right? Like this is a Kansas City native. George Karlaftis during the off season last year hung around Kansas City for a little bit, and guess who he's working with? Chiefs legend Tamba Hali. So I want to see Felix link up with George and Tamba this offseason. I think that'd be really good for him. Learning some of those hand fighting techniques and things that Tamba learned throughout his career to really extend his career and make him that dominant pass rusher. I think, committing himself to that would be the smartest thing that he could do this offseason. And, I am excited to see how this kind of edge rushing group grows and how it changes. I think BJ Thompson was a player who flashed a little bit last season as well when he got opportunities in week 18, week 17, wherever the last week of the season was. I think he was a guy who flashed some ability. Obviously, he's a little bit different prototype from some of these other guys. He's not winning with the brute strength. He's more of a speed to power type rusher. So I think that's someone who has a lot of potential heading into his second year to maybe stand out. I know that the Chiefs are very high on Truman Jones as an undrafted free agent. Malik Herring obviously is a guy that has been here, that knows the system, that the team trusts. Omenihu obviously had the late season ACL injury, so he's probably not going to be, playing too early on in the season. I wouldn't rule him out getting in there late September. I hear that he's really attacking this rehab, and they've made a lot of progress with how they handle ACL injuries.
That's true.
Pro sports. So, yeah, I think he could be back and surprise people and be back on the field a little bit sooner than later. And then the most intriguing fella on here, I think, is that Jordan Smith.
Okay.
And player who is out of the NFL after a few seasons. Was a fairly high draft pick, I believe, by the Jacksonville Jaguars, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're right. Yeah. That's right.
And I think that he played at UAB. I think.
Yeah, he's like he's got that look to him. He's very. I know is this body type, and I know he's wingspan, and he looks like he's got like a freak athlete look to him.
Yeah, and if he attacked, his time away from the game, the right way, and has developed his body the right way since entering the league, I think he's someone just to keep an eye on who could surprise.
Okay, definitely. We'll keep it.
The Chiefs are always looking for those guys to take a chance on who have that high upside.
Well, I mean, it sounds to me, though, that even though there's some promise and there's a lot of upside, they're also very young on the edge when you're talking about them not having a Menahu possibly for maybe the year, if not at least for most of the season. So do you think that's going to be a position? I mean, do you think, well, because they're so young there, they probably take a look at like a 1-year veteran guy late in the free agency cycle, and then wait for the young guys to develop? Or could this be a position that they take a look at early in the draft?
They're going to add someone here. I know they're looking too. They have a top 30 visit with Marshawn Nealand out of Western Michigan. So I know they're looking, and that's like a top 100 type guy. It's not
Sure.
a guy who's going to go in the first round or anything. I would be surprised if they took an edge in the first round. Just because one, I don't think there's a lot of guys who fit the kind of Steve Spagnuolo prototype who are there. I think there are a lot of intriguing, like longer athletes kind of later in the draft that you could probably look at for Spags, who you could add to this group and could help, raise that ceiling. I do think that, if the longer that Mike Dana's out there, the more likely it is that he has an opportunity to come back to Kansas City.
Yep, that's
and
true.
I know that he's beloved by the coaching staff, by the defensive line coach, by Steve Spagnuolo, and by his teammates. So I think that, worst comes to worst, you bring back Dana, and you kind of run it back with those same guys. But there's definitely going to be an addition or two there, during the course of this process.
And it sounds like
I was going to say you got to remember too that Chris Jones plays some edge from time to time.
That's true.
They pick their spots for Jones to go out there on the edge. So
it sounds like, or it looks like as well, that they're pretty good depth inside. So do you think they're fine there? That they're not adding anything else inside?
I don't think that anyone they re-sign will kind of prevent them from saying, hey, like, we like this interior defensive lineman, we want to draft him. Because you got to remember, a lot of these guys outside of Chris Jones, Buggs is on a 1-year deal, Wharton, Pennell,
sure,
Noddy, they're all 1-year deals. Farrell and Jones are the only two players who have more years on their contract than that. So, I think there might be some sense of, hey, let's go grab a guy that can be here for a while. I know that, last year they drafted the kid out of Texas, Keandre Coburn, and, he didn't exactly pan out, ended up on the practice squad for a little bit, then got poached, then got dropped, then came back, then got poached again. He was someone that they liked, that they hoped would develop, but didn't end up happening that way. But I think they'll be on the lookout for maybe potentially a late round guy, maybe a Logan Lee out of Iowa, maybe a Christian Boyd out of Northern Iowa, maybe one of those guys. I think those guys could potentially be on the radar, but we'll just kind of see how that progresses.
Yeah, but like you said as well, I mean, hey, if the right guy is available, if somebody slips and they're looking for someone that they believe could instantly be an impact player for them, then the rest of the guys are just looked at as hey, it's nice that we have depth, but hey, this guy can immediately turn out to be our third most talented interior player if we just draft him. So let's do it. It sounds like that's kind of where they are, but more than likely, we could be looking at least them taking a look a little bit later in the draft. Okay. Before we switch over from defense to offense, then I want to ask you about Spags, because I hear a lot of people asking, when we hear about, well, is Andy Reid retiring, and he's not retiring, and how long is he going to hang around? And do you think Spags is going to end up just being the defensive coordinator for as long as Reid is here, and then when Reid does retire, Spags takes over?
I think Spags has expressed that he wants a head coaching opportunity again, that he's learned it. And I think, he's learned from the first time, and I think he's proven that he deserves that opportunity.
Yes.
I just don't know that, that he's going to leave for any old opportunity.
Oh, yeah, sure. Why would you?
I think, I think you look at this last year, this was what he 1920. This was his 5th year in Kansas City, right? Since joining up. So, and this was also the first year that his wife moved out from the East Coast to live with him in Kansas City throughout the year.
Oh,
so okay. The fact that took 4 years to happen, and that she's comfortable doing that, and now she's there. I don't know how keen he is on like picking up and moving. For any old opportunity, it's got to be the right one. And I think he would be content, hanging around Kansas City and maybe waiting and seeing that opportunity come in KC, if and when, Coach Reed decides to hang it up. But I don't think Andy's anywhere close to having that desire. I think he's a lifer in this game. I think that, until something happens where he needs to retire, I don't think it's going to happen.
Okay. Sounds good. Let's now move on over to the offense. And we don't have to talk much about the number one quarterback. So who do you, is right now, I mean, is it just, all right, we'll see what happens in the draft. And if nothing happens in the draft, then we'll just bring Gabbert back? Or do you think they have their eye specifically on someone else as the number two?
I mean, I think they like Chris Oladokun. I think he showed a lot during the preseason last year that, proves that he can kind of maybe be that guy. I think they're going to see what they have with Ian Book, if they can maybe get the most out of him. He hasn't exactly been stunning in his NFL career so far, but and then, they're going to have their eyes on some guys, maybe an undrafted free agency or late round guys, but I don't see this being a year the Chiefs are like, hey, let's draft like a guy in the second round and have him behind Patrick Mahomes and then try to flip him for a first round draft pick. I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
I would be shocked if they went that route. Being that Gabbert's still out there, and obviously, he's got a decision to make on his future. Is he going to retire after
getting the
one ring?
Yep.
And there's some other options out there. No one who's too exciting, right? But the Chiefs have always had a veteran guy behind Patrick Mahomes. That's always been their thing, and I think that's something that Andy Reid values. So I wouldn't be shocked if once they get some things figured out with the cap and what they have planned with Sneed, that they clear some cap space and they bring a guy like Gabbert back, and that could happen after the draft. That would probably be the timing for it.
Now, as I said in the beginning of the video, don't forget you can check out the link in the description area, and we're going to have that so you can take a look at the Our Lads video report where we zeroed in on the top three needs for the Chiefs. And interesting enough, Charles went with the offensive side and the top three needs. And so we're going to kind of move into one of those, the running back position. So Pacheco, of course, has been dynamic since he's been drafted in the 7th round. But there's a lot of questions after that. And especially there's also questions with Pacheco's health based on his physical running style. So with a couple of guys still free agents, Edwards-Helaire, of course, and McKinnon, what do you think happens here? Is it possible they might actually, and I guess it is because you mentioned this with your draft need report, that they could look early in the draft process for a running back?
Like I said, I wouldn't be shocked if it was round 2, round 3. I would not be shocked if they started looking at guys then. I think if you can get a guy who, can complement that physical running style, be a good pass catcher, a good pass protector, if you get one of those guys in the draft, maybe it's the Wisconsin kid, maybe it's Braylon Allen, maybe it's the kid out of Texas, Brooks, maybe it's the kid out of Florida State, Benson. I think those are the guys that you're looking at early. Later in the draft, I think, they like the physical profiles of guys like a kid out of Louisville who blew everybody away, Isaac, I can't remember his last name. But, I think the later you get into the draft, the more you're like, hey, you're rolling the dice and finding a guy who can be that complement, that contributor in the way that you need him to be.
Okay.
I think one of Jerick McKinnon or Clyde Edwards-Helaire will be back this next year. I think that's probably a given. Neither of them have been picked up. If you're the Chiefs, I think the ideal scenario for you, though, is like a guy like Deneric Prince takes a big step forward and is your number 2 running back. You bring back a guy like McKinnon and you draft a guy who is maybe in the later rounds who you think can develop into like a McKinnon replacement, being that he's getting up there,
Yep.
right? I think that would be the ideal situation for Kansas City. I don't think they particularly want to use, big draft capital on a position like running back. But I think they recognize the value of having a stable running back room, having guys in there who can, take over a game if needed while this offensive line is intact,
Sure.
right? Because, the offense is still figuring some things out under Matt Nagy, and, they're hoping that, Marquise Brown and the wide receivers can improve this year and get off to a better start, not drop as many passes,
Yes.
and help extend Travis Kelce's career.
Yeah.
But you have to prepare in the event that, hey, we're going to have to use more, heavy personnel and run the football and play some smash mouth football to complement the rest of the offense.
Yeah, what's interesting is not many people would guess if you were talking, if you were trying to figure out which team in the NFL played the most 13 personnel last year. I'm telling you right now, you'd have to have 20 guesses before you guess the Chiefs.
Yeah, and they found kind of a cheat code there, right? Because you got all these guys who are you're gonna have teams who are matching personnel, right? Bringing all these big bodies in to stop Isaiah Pacheco from running down your throat, and then you've got guys like Noah Gray and Travis Kelce who can hurt you in the passing game. So it puts these defenses into conflict, and they found, really in the postseason when they really started ramping that up, and teams just couldn't do anything about it.
I know. I think I mentioned this the last time we spoke, and I've got my eye on this kid Garrett Prince, and because there aren't many of these free agents that I'm aware of, but some I am, and Prince is one of them. So I'm still intrigued by whether, because I think he's got talent, and I want to maybe see if he's got what it takes to have a good successful second season there. But Irv Smith was signed, so I know he's had injury problems. But he's not going to be counted on massively, of course, with Travis Kelce there. But bottom line is, do you think they're done at tight end right now?
I don't think they are. I think that if they wanted to, that they could add somebody there. Obviously, if you're sitting there late in the draft and, someone like Brock Bowers is dropping, in that round one, I think you got to consider maybe going up and getting him, right? But even more so, I think they're looking at some of these later round guys who are maybe getting overlooked, who could potentially develop, who maybe need some time. I mentioned the kid out of Iowa earlier,
yep.
Eric All.
Yep.
He's a possibility. I think the kid out of Penn State, kid out of Illinois. Those are some guys that I know they've looked at.
Okay.
So I think they're definitely looking, and I don't think that that Irv Smith signing, I don't think that stops them from anything there. I think that they're going to have some opportunities to potentially go and get a guy.
Okay. Now, and speaking of the wide receiver room, and again, speaking of drops, but things did work out. Rashee Rice developed nicely, but Sky Moore still has not. And then I'd be shocked if Kadarius Toney was still on this team when the season begins. But there's an awful lot of backups there, an awful lot of free agents on that depth chart. So what do you think? Besides Brown, Watson, Rice, and Moore, that's your four. So there's still room for one or two more. If one or two more is on this team, and let's remove Toney from the equation, tell me, who do you think has the edge, one or two, with the rest of that group?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Toney thing is interesting first, because you got to wonder, like, is he going to be willing to, accept a role where, okay, maybe like his primary job is punt returner? Like, is that something he's willing to accept? He's electric as a punt returner. He could be one of the best in the league if he put his full focus into that. So, I wonder on that. But if that doesn't happen, and say they do move on from him, then you got questions there, right? Who's going to be your returner? I don't think you want Marquise Brown being a kick or punt returner. I think you want him being one of your top receivers alongside Rashee Rice. So Montrell Washington is a guy that, you had early on in the season playing that role when you had some injuries there, but then he ended up getting cut, going to the practice squad. Nico Remigio was an interesting free agent addition last year, and I think he probably would have had a chance to make the team had he not suffered that shoulder injury that ended him up on IR for the whole year. I think that's a guy to watch potentially as your guy who makes the team as a special team or return specialist. I've been waiting for Cornell Powell to get his chance for a long time. I think he deserved it last season. I think the Chiefs should have, when they were having wide receiver struggles, brought him up from the practice squad and given him a chance to just be a guy and get out there. But he didn't get that. And I wonder at this point in his career, they continue bringing him back because he's a great player on the scout team, provides a lot of value there, knows the system, whatnot. But at some point, it's shit or get off the pot time with this guy. Yeah. I feel like you got to either give him his chance or you got to let him go. Justin Ross, huge potential, was the darling of training camp last year. Had off-season troubles, where he ended up on in-season troubles, I should say, where he ended up on the commissioner exempt list. Really didn't get much of an opportunity to contribute in the offense the way that fans had hoped. So, I think, of these guys who are there, Marquise Brown, Justin Watson, Rashee Rice, and Sky Moore are the only four that I think you can guarantee roster spots. I think there's going to be just a ton of competition below that. And honestly, I think this group is going to look a lot different after the draft. I think, obviously they'll add some undrafted free agents. They'll probably cut some of these guys that are, on the team right now. They might find some guys that they have ranked higher that they like better. I'm interested to see, can a guy like Anthony Miller, who was, former, high draft pick, play with Matt Nagy in Chicago, is that a guy who can come in and maybe somehow sneak his way onto the roster? I think that would be interesting to watch. And
Copeland has talent as well.
Yeah. Copeland's speed. He's got a ton of speed. He was really fast last year in the draft process in his pro day or combine workout, I recall.
By the way, you said that this would be receivers would be a top need for the draft. So you do, and it's a deep draft of receivers. Yeah. So you do believe that there's a real good chance that with either the first or second pick that they're going to take an added wide receiver.
I'd be genuinely shocked if they didn't take a wide receiver with either their first round or their second round pick. And if they do it in the second round, they might have to move up, kind of the way they did for Rashee Rice, the way they did for Sky Moore, to get the guy they want, right?
Well, maybe they use the Sneed deal to do that.
Yeah, maybe they use the Sneed deal to do that. Maybe they use, one of their fifth round draft picks to move up a few slots and make sure you get a guy before someone else does. I mean, they definitely have some options there. And I wouldn't be shocked if, they prioritize someone, in the late rounds as well, on day 3. There are a lot of intriguing talents there who are guys who would be looked at a lot earlier if this wasn't as deep in the draft class. So
especially somebody that can double as a kick returner.
Right. They had a top 30 visit with Anthony Gould out of Oregon State, who's a, dynamic return specialist. So that's a guy who, probably is on the cusp of being drafted, but maybe that's the guy you look at with your 7th round pick, 252, where you're like, okay, we're going to draft this guy. We have him rated as an undrafted player, but we're drafting him to make sure we get it. Right. Yep. So maybe that's where that kick returner type things skill set comes into play. And then, maybe earlier in the draft, you're looking at, bigger bodied wide receivers, guys who can play that traditional X type receiver role.
All right. And then we're going to wrap up with the offensive line. So the big story, of course, is the fact that that left tackle spot, even though Wanya Morris is a third-round draft pick, a lot of times when you draft a third-round tackle, by the second year, he should be starting. Otherwise, you're spending a third-round draft pick on him. I mean, that's normally the process, or that's the wish list. That's what you're trying to do. Elevate the guy by at least year two. So you feel right now that that's more than likely what's going to be the scenario, that Morris will be the starter on day one?
Yeah, I mean, their moves to this point have shown us that they have enough faith in Morris to be the starter. I think that, and I think they've heard too from people that they respect in terms of, offensive line play and whatnot. I know that some of their former players, the Schwartz brothers, have both publicly stated, like, if Wanya needs to be the starter at left tackle, that he is fully capable of doing that, just from watching his play this year. So that's, big endorsement.
Yep.
And obviously, the coaching staff loves him. They love what he was able to do and stepping in for Donovan Smith. But he still needs to take that step forward to be that guy, to fully, to get in there and say, like, this is my job.
Oh yeah, that's right.
We're not surrendering this. This is my job. So I think that because of that, there's going to be competition added there. I mentioned Chu Godric as a guy who could surprise, but I don't think I don't think you bank on that. Right?
No.
Yeah. So I know they're comfortable with Lucas Niang being a depth piece. He's been there for a while, but I don't think he's a guy you want to rely on as a starter at either tackle spot. I think he's a guy who can start for stretches, probably, 5-6 games if you need him to. I look at the interior depth right now, and it is worrisome.
Yeah.
They need additions there. Both veteran additions, maybe bringing in, I haven't even looked at the veteran free agent list right now, but, the guard market exploded this year, so it might be hard to get a guy, but I think, there are some guys out there there could be some appeal for, coming in, backing up the left guard and right guard positions. And then you got to find a guy who can potentially come in and play center. I don't know if, you bring back Austin Ryder, is still a free agent, if he still wants to keep playing. That could be a guy who, you keep him on the practice squad. You don't necessarily need to roster him. That could probably be a possibility. I wouldn't be shocked if that's a post-draft type of signing that they bring him back for camps.
Yeah, because you mentioned on the other video that Humphrey, Tooney, and Smith, they're all going to need new contracts really soon.
And when you think about it too, like, Humphrey's going to want to be the highest paid center in the league.
Absolutely.
And he's deserving of it.
Yes.
Outside of his struggles with snaps occasionally, but
yeah.
But that's the thing. You just gave out record-setting money to defensive tackle. You just gave out big rework deal for Patrick Mahomes ahead of the season. Obviously you've got money locked up in the right tackle position, Juwan Taylor. You're potentially going to have to pay or extend Joe Tooney or Trey Smith, keep some of that interior together as well. So it's like, can you afford to pay Creed Humphrey at the top of the market?
Yeah.
So, I mean, these are things you got to start thinking about now.
Absolutely. They all can't come back.
You've got to get contingencies in place. So I do think that we're going to see, I mentioned, do you draft a guy like a Jordan Morgan in the first round who played left tackle in college, but a lot of evaluators think that he's going to be a left guard in the NFL. Do you bring him in this year and do you say, okay, compete with Wanya Morris? Maybe Morris ends up being the guy. Maybe he ends up being the guy. Whoever ends up being the guy, maybe next year that changes, right? Maybe Morris is the guy next year and you slide Morgan over to left guard and, extend Creed Humphrey, find a guy to play right guard and let Trey Smith walk. There's a lot of different options, but I think, you got to provide yourself some flexibility. And I think the draft is going to be where they do that. there's still a few tackle options out there who are kind of interesting. Obviously, Donovan Smith's still available. You could just run it back with him, bring him back. But I don't know if that's something that you want to do. But, obviously he was penalized quite frequently along with Jawan Taylor. I don't know if that's, something that you want to try to improve that. A move that makes a lot of sense. Brett Veach likes taking flyers on guys who are former high draft picks. Go out and get Mekhi Becton and see if, bring him in to compete. Maybe he's someone that you can salvage his career.
He's not done. Yeah, he's definitely, he needs to change the scenery. Absolutely.
Yeah. So maybe that's the guy that you bring in and have, compete with Wanya. And maybe he ends up being the backup, but, that definitely raises the floor of that group significantly to make a move like that.
So Morris can play inside as well if he needs to?
I think he's probably more of a tackle. I don't think that he's a guy that you're going to playing inside. I think he's probably staying on the outside. And then, right now, the big question mark on the interior is Mike Caliendo. Like, can he play? He's played some center. Can he play left guard? Can he play right guard? Like, where do you want him for the future? Where is he going to back up and have that most success? I think the Chiefs envision him in their future and want him to succeed. But question is, can he put it together?
All right. A couple more things before I let you go, Charles. I want to ask you, first of all, special teams. So, of course, of all teams to be able to get the Wonder Boy punter, it's the Chiefs. And so if this kid, look, I thought what happened to him was shameful. I really do. And but that's how things are nowadays. And it's wrong. But he's got a lot of his career ahead of him. And if he's a good boy, the rest of his career, not saying he was a bad boy, but if he's just stays clean and shows you the ability that he clearly has, this could be the best. At least I know Butker's not a young kid anymore, but this could be the best 1-2 combo in the league. So, but the kid's got to go out there and prove it, of course, during the regular season in the NFL. And then we talked about the return game. Tony, is he here? Is he not? And if he's not, then keep an eye on them maybe drafting a wide receiver / kick returner late.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I'll start with the return specialist stuff. Player to look out for the kick returner position is probably Deneric Prince. I know he's someone that they like there early on. So if he takes the step forward that I know the coaching staff is hoping, right? I think that, he takes over that kick returner role and he's depth at the running back position. I think that would be the ideal for that. In terms of punt return specialist, I think, if Tony's not there, you're looking at Montrell Washington, Nico Remigio as two guys who can do it. Sky Moore is another guy who can do it, but Chiefs fans are probably just grinding their teeth at that. They don't want that. But, he's proven that he can do it. And then, there's an opportunity to go out and potentially draft someone.
Yeah.
Dave Tobe's always on the lookout for guys who have that skill set. And I wouldn't be shocked if the Chiefs brought in someone with that skill set, either through the draft or undrafted free agency, to create more competition there at both kick returner and punt returner.
Okay.
As far as the punter spot goes, I think it's great that the Chiefs are giving this kid a second chance.
Absolutely.
Andy Reid's kind of become known for that, for giving guys chances. It's all about if he can make the most of it, right? I think the most intriguing part of this is he was not a holder during his college career, because he was a combo punter kicker. So he was, someone else was holding for him because he was out there kicking, right? It can't hold for yourself, right? So, but he, when he was with the Bills for that short period of time, he was learning to hold. So I'm curious, Butker and Townsend had some issues in the past with the holding. And and I was a little surprised to see like James Winchester come back too, because I was thinking like, maybe like this whole operation is going to change now, with Arisa coming in and not having that experience. So, seeing Winchester come back, I think that tells me maybe they're a little bit confident in his ability to hold. And I'm not certain about this, but I think that maybe they'll bring in somebody to push him a little bit. I don't think they're going to just give him the job. Like, I think they're probably going to bring in an undrafted punter to put out there and be like, hey, like you're going to have this opportunity to compete. I think that's a probability, a high probability, because obviously, maybe you bring in that punter and you keep him on the practice squad in the event that something does happen with Matt, where okay, you got to move on from him, or okay, you're have him for one season and he was nails, and then he's got a 1-year deal. You can't afford to pay him whatever he's worth, so you gotta get another guy, and maybe you have him on the roster already. So that's something to consider, I think. Maybe bringing in some competition there.
All right. And then I just want to quickly go over the remaining free agents or ones that have left. Just get a very quick analysis or answers on this. Willie Gay, since he's gone, how does that impact the linebacker unit?
Yeah, I mean, Willie, he had a lot of intangibles here. They called him the hype man for the team because he was just always real active on the sideline, getting the fans going, getting the team going, always choosing the music during the games and during practice and stuff. Like, he brought a lot of energy. So I know the Chiefs are going to miss that. Willie was an interesting story in Kansas City because I attended training camp 2 years in a row where I really thought, like, watching the defense during training camp, like, it was very clear to me. I was like, Willie Gay Jr. is the second best defender on this team next to Chris Jones. Like I had that thought many times, and it came down to the season got here and that never transferred.
Yeah.
Like it just, he made some incredible flash plays. Don't get me wrong, but he was never a consistent producer in Kansas City. I think he had some frustration over that because I don't think he felt like he was on the field as much as he needed to be. But most of the time, the Chiefs only have 2 linebackers on the field, and that's the reality of it. Of the NFL today, is that you don't play a lot of base defense in a 4-3 and get all 3 of those guys on the field at once. And when you do, oftentimes you're attacking downhill, you're dealing with run plays, and you're not necessarily showing off the abilities that Willie had, which was to really be a run and chase type of linebacker, but also a coverage guy. So I think that I think he's going to be a really, really nice asset for the New Orleans Saints. I do think the Chiefs are going to miss him, but I also think that when push came to shove, they had to make a decision between Willie Gay Jr. and Drew Tranquill, and I think Drew gave them more value in his ability to play Mike and step in there and keep the defense, at that high level. I think if you decided to keep Willie, then all of a sudden you're relying on a Jack Cochran or a Cole Christensen to come in and be your Mike. And I don't think that was as appealing to Kansas City.
Okay. The move to go with Arisa and let Townsend leave. I know Townsend had such a huge 22 season, not as good statistically last year. But why was that? Was that just a money thing?
Yeah, I was a little surprised because I don't think that the contract he got, I probably would have done that if I was Kansas City. I didn't think it was too substantial, but I think, what's going on with Sneed now has kind of, stunted their free agency. They're kind of, at a gridlock right now. They can't really do anything because they don't have a whole lot of cap to work with. So, I think that might have contributed to it a little bit. But I think, they made their decision early on that they weren't going to pay Townsend something that had him at the top of the market. And I mean, I think he's making like a top 5 contract for a punter. So even with just, I think it's a 2-year, 10 million deal or something like that, I still think he's a pretty substantial, punter salary. And when you have Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback, you're not punting.
Oh yeah,
all that frequently.
That is true too. Right.
I do think what they will miss with Townsend compared to Arisa is, whereas Arisa's a talented athlete, like very talented athlete, Townsend had the experience as a former quarterback, right? He could throw. So they had, I think three of his 4 fake punt pass attempts were converted during his career in Kansas City. They basically did a fake pass punt, a fake punt pass, once a year for his whole career. So they're going to miss that. They're going to miss that. They're not going to have that with Arisa. They are going to have some athleticism where he can maybe carry the ball. So it's a different type of, fake that he probably brings to the table. But I think you're a little bit more comfortable running a fake with your punter throwing a pass than you are with your punter
That's true.
running and subjecting himself to possibly getting, hurt. So that's something to consider there.
All right. And then I also want to just go through the current free agents that are still out there. We talked about some of them. So you got Gabbert, you got Edwards, Hilaire, McKinnon. You mentioned you think McKinnon might be back maybe late in the process, which makes sense, veteran like that. Valdez-Scantling, Harmon, and James, the receivers are free agents. Donovan Smith and Bell. And then on defense, we mentioned Dana might be back late in the process. Mike Edwards, you don't think he'll be back. So we talked about most of them. Hardman, what's up there? I mean, obviously a very strange season for Hardman. And he's a free agent again, though. But I don't know. What do you think? He's a kick returner. Is it possible he comes back?
I think, there's certainly a possibility there. I just don't know. I feel like the Chiefs want to move on in a sense. I think that they were a little desperate last year in their decision to bring him back just because of how bad their core was struggling. And they took the opportunity to bring him back to kind of, help, again, raise the floor of that room and, give Pat someone that he trusted. And, it before the Super Bowl, that did not look like a good trade. That looked like the Chiefs basically, blew a compensatory draft pick. And then the guy goes and catches the game-winning pass in the Super Bowl. and all of a sudden that trade was entirely worth it. And, good for him. I'm super happy for him. I hope that some team offers him a deal. I think he's a talented player. I think he can be an asset for a team. I don't know that his future is in Kansas City. I think that, maybe if he's still available and we're here, talking the first week of May, maybe they're like, okay, we didn't get the wide receiver we wanted in the draft or whatnot. Maybe we bring him in as depth and let him compete and see if he can be like the 6th or 7th receiver on the roster. And, maybe that is his role. Maybe he's a kick returner, punt returner for the team and you leave it at that. But I think at the end of the day, they probably part ways.
And the two that you think have the biggest chance of returning would be Dana on defense and McKinnon on offense, correct?
Yeah. I think those two right now, I think that's probably the likeliest to return. I would think Dana would be sooner than later. I don't know that it would be super late in the process. I think maybe it's a scenario where they figure out a way to clear some more cap before the draft and they bring him back. I think that, McKinnon would probably be like a training camp ad that you bring him back then. I don't think you need him for the rest of the offseason program. He's a veteran. He's been through it. Even if you signed him, I don't think he would show up to any of the voluntary stuff. So.
And you don't think anybody else is getting cut, right? No more cap saving measures. Nothing else like that needs to happen.
I would be surprised. I mean, they do have some options there. I think, extensions are probably where you're
Okay.
potentially looking for cap savings at this point. Maybe it's a Justin Reed, who's a guy I know they like. Maybe they give him a couple more years on his deal and, lower his hit for this year. He's only got this last year on his contract. So that's something that could happen potentially in the next couple of weeks. But, as of a few weeks ago, he had told people on Twitter, X rather, that he hadn't had any talks with the team about an extension yet. So
okay,
that's something to maybe monitor, keep an eye on. Maybe they get something done early with one of these guys that we're talking about next year. Maybe it's, Creed. Maybe he gets his deal early and they find some way to lower his number for this year or, whatnot. Maybe it's a guy like, maybe they get someone to take a bit of a deal early to stay with the team. So that's there's potential there as well.
Charles, awesome job as always. I can't wait to talk to you again after the draft, right around probably sometime between post-draft and training camp. So we all can't wait for training camp already, but we all can't wait for the draft first. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm sure you're having the time of your life covering the team right now. Just remember this because 30, 40 years from now, these are all the memories that you're going to have to cherish.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So they don't come around very often, and they probably won't come around again. So I'm sure Chiefs fans are enjoying every bit of it, and they could check out ChiefsWire.com. By the way, you have any regular shows you're doing, any podcasts, anything like that?
Well, I'm actually at A to Z Sports now. That's the one thing.
Oh, okay.
Remember that, right?
That's right.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. I'm no longer at Chiefs. I'm A to Z Sports. I'm not doing any regular podcasts. However, I do hop on some of their stuff every now and again. We do have
but nothing regular. Okay.
Yeah, they have a draft show that we just kind of got started up recently, and every now and again they might ask me to hop on there, but mostly just doing the written work now.
Nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, that's what I'm going to be doing as soon as we're done with this. I have I'm down to 11 team reports I do each year for the Our Lads Draft Guide. Chiefs are one of them. Chiefs are the last team besides my own team, the Jets. The two left to go, mine and yours. And then it's the deadline is in a couple of days, and then the draft guide will be out real soon, so the fans could look forward to that. We'll get some PDFs in your hands. We can get a hard copy for you as well if you'd like. Of course, you can give them away, the PDFs, to maybe the guys at ADC Sports if they're going to be doing some giveaways themselves. We can do that. And of course, I'm glad I just we just clarified that, because I have to make sure that we have, of course, the correct updated link in the description area to A to Z Sports, which we of course will do.
Absolutely.
We have the link in the description for your Twitter account. So that's the same, right? That hasn't changed.
Yes,
Okay.
That hasn't changed. That won't change for a while.
Yeah, right. Can't do that. All right. So again, like I said, Charles, awesome job, and we'll definitely talk again before the start of the next season, which will be an opportunity for the Chiefs to defend.
Three-peat.
Yeah, go for a three-peat, double defend. Yes, lots of fun. Yeah. Thanks, Charles.
That'll be interesting.
All right.